Once upon a time there was a boy named Jim. Jim was born on March 21st and was raised in Columbus, Ohio. Jim was raised by both of his parents, Todd and Linda. Todd and Linda both came from families where they were the only children. This sometimes put a tear on their relationship because they were both used to being the center of attention. However, both Todd and Linda loved being the only child growing up, so they decided that one child would be perfect for them too. Upon deciding this, Todd and Linda had their first and only son, Jim. As a baby, Jim was showered with love. His parents constantly gave him attention. He spent most of his time with his parents, and they developed a very special bond. By the time Jim grew up and started school, he was used to getting everything he wanted. His parents always bought him new toys and gave him the most popular new items. As school rolled around, Jim had a hard time making friends, just simply because he didn't like the other students. Jim often told his parents that the other students were trying to steal his things. Turned out that Jim didn't want to share with them. He wasn't used to sharing his toys like the other boys and girls in his school were, and it was hard for him to give up his things. Jim made it through elementary school and was headed into middle school. He was at the top of his class and flying through his studies with straight A's. All of Jim's teachers loved him and always told him that he had a bright academic future. Jim was so advanced in his classes that he even started taking some high school courses. Jim spent most of his time alone. Jim was perfectly content spending his weekends cozying up to a nice, enjoyable novel. After being on the top of the honor roll list, Jim graduated middle school with a couple of very proud parents. Todd and Linda had enough money to spare because they only had one child, so they sent Jim to a scholarly private school. At this school, Jim excelled in his studies. By the time he was a freshman, he was already looking at colleges, and by the time he was a junior, he had taken the ACT 2 times. He got a 34 on the first attempt and a 36 on the second attempt. It was safe to say that Jim could go to whatever college he wanted to. When Jim graduated high school, he knew exactly what college he wanted to go to. His parents went there, so he also wanted to go. The college was Princeton. Without the guidance from his parents for the first time ever, Jim struggled his way through college. He didn't know what he wanted to become and ended up switching his major several times before finally figuring out what he wanted to do. He had a hard time realizing who he was, and when he finally managed to do so, he no longer felt isolated from everyone and started making a lot of friends. His life was on track. Jim even met a girl. Her name was Catherine, and she also attended Princeton. Jim and her were a perfect match. Catherine brought out the best in Jim and helped him become less selfish and arrogant. They were married 4 years after they met and are now expecting their first child, and they lived happily ever after. The end.